So there are amazing coffees. Brazil is the image of Brazil being chocolate is the volume of Brazil, but the specialty coffee producers and farmers, you can find anything in Brazil now. This is what amazes us.
Roasted.
Really expert in that space.
Nobody can beat anymore.
Infused
For 20, 30 years.
Because it tends to be their own
When
job.
you were working the land.
$1,000 per
Per
kilo.
kilo.
So welcome back to another episode of the Acid Makes Coffee Better podcast. I'm here with Edgard Bressani of Latitudes Coffee Brazil. Yes?
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you very much for joining us today. So we were just sort of chatting about, we're going to get into the sort of the depths of Brazil coffee production, but can you just explain sort of what you do in Brazil? And then we'll launch straight into how Brazilian coffee production and farming is different to the rest of the world.
All right. Latitudes, my company, is the only Brazilian company that works with the 42 different regions in the country. We work with the specialty canéforas from the Amazon region all the way down to the coffees from Paraná and Sul de Minas, Cerrado, Bahia, everywhere. So it was a project created, but aiming at working with small and mid-sized farmers only, because the big ones can export direct. They don't need my help. But it's like finding these treasures that are still hidden, trying to find new farms, different farms, and also supporting farmers, because we understand that they need to get to know their coffees better and have support in having people to cup their coffees and give them the score so that they take these scores when they are negotiating the prices with different players. So we've been not only working from exporting, but also trying to change the reality of these farmers in Brazil, and also connecting with our cities, trying to, even with the schools, we have social programs with kids. So they have to write an essay about coffee, and then the winners are giving a week coffee program as a gift, because we still have many people, even though they are living in an area that produces coffee, all these teenagers, they have no idea of how many options they have to work in coffee. They can be roast masters, baristas, they can be engineers, they can be traders. So there are lots of opportunities. So we try to open their minds.
Mm-hmm. And so when you say small to medium-sized farms, what is that?
We have farmers that are like 2 hectares big.
Oh, wow.
2, 5, there are many. All the way up to 200, 300 hectares, which is not too big in the case of Brazil. But I think also people have a wrong idea when they imagine Brazil, or they have Brazil production. We have a lot of farms, 320,000 farms more or less, but the majority has less than 20 hectares. So this is it's a number that people, I don't think they imagine that this is the number. Less than 20 hectares is more than 70% of our farms. So the bigger than this is in just like 30 some percent, less than 30%. But people have the wrong idea that the farms are 1,000, 2,000, 5,000. That's not the case. But it's the way people were probably visiting these big players in the past when the specialty coffee movement began in 1991. So they were attracted to the ones that first started to produce coffees, specialty coffees of high quality, because they had the means. But then now, this is not the reality of Brazil. The farms are less than 20 hectares in more than 70% of our people.
But then would a lot of those farms be aggregated into regional lots? And so because how many sacks would you get from 20 hectares in Brazil? How many sacks of grain?
It depends a lot, because per hectare, you can have people producing 25 bags.
Right.
All the way up to, if they're super professional, they can maybe produce 60, 70, depending on, but you have the cycle of 1 year producing more, 1 year producing less. So then you have an average. But if they produce 40, 50 is a good number. Of course, that canéfora can produce 150. But we are talking about Brazil, and 2/3 of our production is Arabica, and 1/3 is canéfora.
And so, but most of those farms, are they selling per farm, or are you trying to sell per farm? As you know?
The ones we deal with, we try to. Well, we have different lines of products in our product line. So we have alchemy, for example, which is it's special preparations with some fermentations. But these are fermentations that we share protocols with Aida Betley, for example, our friend from El Salvador. So we do Kenya, Burundi, and Ethiopia style fermentations with her. This is also a project that we have Stefanos on board, and some different people, Chad. But then we have also a line of legends, which is also some of my friends, like barista competitors or roast masters, and these people also support these lines of product. But then we also have farms, which is the state line, only no mix of farms at all. It's always one estate. But we have also a blended line. This blended line has coffees that can be a combination of 2 or 3 people. But these are coffees from 82 to 85. It's then from 85 and above, it would be only the estate line or the micro lot line or the exotic line, which is also playing with fermentations, double fermentation, anaerobic fermentation, aerobic everything. So different lines and combining sometimes farms, sometimes only being estate. But most of them estates. Only the blended line has 2 or 3 farms together.
Got it. Because I think people's perception of Brazilian coffee is that it is just this sort of mass-produced. It's fairly interchangeable between different, parts. Very nutty, lots of, let's say, brown type notes that come from those coffees. Are there coffees that? So you said there's coffee that are like an 85. Are there certain areas within Brazil that are more conducive to, if coffee is just farmed without, special fermentations or, yeast added, or are there certain areas which produce more, let's say, fruited coffees, which are more inclined to give a higher score? Or
yeah, I think we have to go back a bit. We have 2 Brazils. One Brazil before 1991 and one Brazil after 1991.
Okay.
Until 1991, we had the Brazilian Coffee Institute controlling all the exports of Brazil. So mainly the coffees, no matter where you were, no matter how much you produced, they were trying to get a certain quality, but a medium standard quality, because all the coffees would be blended. So why would I invest in quality and produce a better lot, better quality coffee if at the end I would be paid the same? So these would be mixed, and then most of these coffees would leave from Santos, or they would leave from Rio. So Santos became famous, and Santos, which is a port name and a city, Santos became a profile recognized as Brazilian coffee. So you have Brazil Santos, you have Brazil Rio, but all these coffees coming from the regions that were through the port of Santos, they had this chocolatey profile. They were a good Brazil, an average good Brazil. But then we also had the Rio coffees, but the ones that were coming from the north of the state of Minas and areas where they had problems with fermentation, phenolic fermentation. So these coffees became almost also famous as Rio coffee. But these are coffees that are phenolic. They are used in the Middle East and also in Turkey, in Greece. These are coffees that people like to prepare ibrick. They have that really strong phenolic taste profile.
Why was there issues with phenolic?
Phenolic, it's just these coffees that ferment badly when they are drying.
Oh, right, okay. Gotcha.
And this is a bad fermentation.
And it was happening
in that area because of practices and but there are people that we cannot be arrogant to say that why are these people drinking these coffees? These were the coffees that they had. These were also coffees that were taken to the communist countries where it was cheaper because of the phenolic taste. It was cheaper, so these people got used and they drink and they like it. Sometimes we have people asking for these coffees for us because it's still consumed nowadays, but it's getting harder and harder to find. Why? Because with the improvement in quality, the improvement in post-harvesting practices, these mistakes are no longer happening as much. So sometimes we have people asking for real coffee. You try to find, and it's hard to find because they are improving. They are having an 80-point coffee, which is much better than the real phenolic taste. But so you have Brazil with all this diversity of 42 regions. We have a territory that it's gigantic. We have different soils, different altitudes. We also have to take into consideration the role of latitudes, and that's why the name of my company comes. Because if you're closer to the equator, you would need higher mountains to have the ideal temperature for coffee growing. But the more you drive south, I cannot have 2,000 meters in Brazil, in Sul de Minas, or in Paraná to grow coffee. It would die. It's too cold. So the more we drive south, the less you will have altitude. So there is this correlation that is very important to remember, that if we are closer to the equator, we need higher mountains. If we are further away from the equator, and Brazil has coffees going to the latitudes 23, 24, this is too cold. Beyond that, there's a limit. Actually, Paraná state, which was super important until the 70s, it produced more coffee at that time than any other state in the country, more than 20 million bags. Minas Gerais produces this today, more than 21 million bags. But with technology, we are talking about 1975 up to that time, the state producing so much coffee, rich soils, very fertile. But there was a devastating frost, the black frost. Nowadays, they produce 3 million bags. So from 20, they went to 30 to 3 million because of this frost. And then people
couldn't recover.
No, people just, they were so scared that they moved. And that's why Cerrado was born. Cerrado was born right after this frost, because people were trying to look for land in areas where frost was not happening very often. So Bahia, Cerrado are regions that were born after this really terrible frost that happened in 75. So we have a Brazil with all this diversity, weather, areas that you have different soils. So we now are, for the past 30 years, a little bit more than 30 years, because Brazil Specialty Coffee Association was founded in 1991. Then also farmers could export direct. Until then, they couldn't. They had to go through, they would have to sell to a company that had the government permission, and they would export the coffees. 1991 is the break point. It's when, if I produce a good coffee, if I invest in producing a good coffee, I can find somebody to buy. And that's when the movement started in Brazil. Inside the country, in the domestic market, it's a little later, in the years 2000. After that we started the boom of coffee shops, and it's when actually we started the competitions in the country in 2002. We bring the competition. I started with that movement, organizing the competitions from the beginning.
Which competitions are you referring to?
The Barista competitions.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
okay,
we started in 2002 because Brazil was the sponsor, the platinum sponsor of WBC at that time. But then we started organizing our competitions as well in Brazil. So a change began, and people started to pay more attention to quality, started to try to produce coffees that were above 80 points that we would consider specialty coffees. And nowadays, I think we've been growing. There's a lot to be done still. But I remember that when we started, I was at Brazil Specialty Coffee Association. I was their executive director. We had 300,000 coffee bags of specialty in the country. Nowadays, we have more than 10 million bags produced over these years, per year. So the numbers became much better. People realized that if they invest in quality, they can have a better product and they can have a better price, add value to the coffees that they export. So Brazil, it's also an investment on research on varietals that are more productive, but also bring a cup profile, because since we were more focused in quantity until 1991, people were not interested in having a geisha or a bourbon that would produce less. They were going for Mundo Novo that would give them more volume. That's what it's important for them at that time. Nowadays, with this shift, with the specialty coffee movement, with people asking for better coffees, for better and different cup profiles, they are also planting different varietals, looking for different varietals, the ones that can give them, of course, a good number in terms of bags, but also a quality in the cup. But this shift cannot happen overnight, because a coffee field might last 40 years. We have an area in a farm that is a partner of ours, Fazenda Santalina, one of a precious terroir that I like a lot. They have an area that is over 100 years old, still producing coffee. That they keep this area and they sell it to the Japanese buyers. But it's 40 years, a long time. So some people, if they planted coffee in 1991, they had to live with that field until now. But what happened also that was very important over these years is the improvement and betterment in post-harvesting techniques. So people are more and more aware of what they are doing on the patio, how to dry better, not to have undesirable fermentations like these phenolic problems that might happen. They started selecting, and because in the past they would mix everything, all the varietals from different fields. Now they separate the varietals. They try to study the profiles. Araras, for example, are behaving super well. They've been doing well in competitions in the country. They're adapting really well. But people now have geisha. They have Sudan Roumain. They have all the exotic varietals also that. But it's again, you plant. It takes time to grow, and then you have to see if it is going to be a real geisha profile or if it is going to be a geisha that has a profile that is different from the geishas that we are used to. Can be still good, but different. But then we cannot stop. It's a non-stop journey in coffee. You have to teach people. But I think the competitions, not only Cup of Excellence, but many of the other one, the regional competitions, are teaching producers or are telling them that if they produce and if they make a good cup, they will maybe get a good result, and people will be watching and they will be after. And also that we have to remember that in Brazil, we now have also opportunities for them to sell in the domestic market. In the past, all these good coffees would be exported, but with more and more coffee shops opening, they don't have the barrier of the language. They can sell direct, and they sell well with good prices. The prices of coffees that could be exported are sold in Brazil because of the cup profile they have, and people are after coffees that are 88, 89, 90 points when they find. And coffee shops can pay because...
I'd like to come back to that point actually of like how the internal consumption of one's own coffee is like how important that is for the economic development of that country.
Yeah.
But I think just for the listeners who maybe aren't in the coffee industry, could you sort of paint the picture of how Brazilian coffee production, farming, processing is different to, let's say, somewhere like Colombia? Completely different terrain. And how does that affect farmers, producers in their terms of their everyday lives? Can you paint that picture for us?
Yeah, well, we have, let's say also, apart from all these 42 different regions, we have coffees that are grown in the mountains of Brazil, which bring the same problems that the coffees produced in Colombia have. Labor. It's hard to manage. The harvest because it's super hilly areas. But we also have areas that are mechanizable in Brazil. It doesn't necessarily mechanizable. You can mechanize or not, but these areas, of course, you need, if it is an area that is mechanizable, you have a different spacing between trees because you need then the tractors to pass and the mechanical harvesters to pass. So the spacing is different from where if you have an area in a hilly area because of you have to take advantage of the space. You have to have more plants to compensate from the costs that you have that are going to be higher. So you have two Brazils, a Brazil of mountains and a Brazil that has mechanizable areas that can be also at 1,100 to 1,200 meters of altitude. So this is a good altitude for Brazil, 800. You can have good, you can have good Arabicas is starting at 600 or 500, depending where you are, if you're down the south. So the more you drive south to the 23 latitudes, you can have lower mountains. And then you can have lower altitudes. But then let's say that an average for the Arabicas, figuring from 600 to 1,400, 500 would be the limit. You have areas then that are mechanizable, that you can, in the high plateaus, that you can use machines. But you can also use people on these areas of where you have mechanization. Because sometimes the trees are too young, you cannot use the machines because they can damage the trees. So you need labor also in areas that are flat. So we do have then labor as a problem in both areas. We use labor for doing selective picking, for doing the stripping, but then we also need labor in these mechanizable areas where you need people to harvest the younger plants, and also people to dry and. But Brazil has an advantage in terms of, in relation to other countries, because the closer you are to the equator, you have more rain. So, although, for example, Colombia has 2 harvests, one small and one big, but they are closer to the equator. It rains more often. They were producing washes for longer. Now they are also doing some wonderful naturals. But Brazil has the advantage of choosing. I can choose to produce a natural, I can choose to produce a honey, I can choose to produce a fully washed coffees, fermented for so many hours. I can do all these special preparations with fermentation. And also we have the drying patios because of our winter is when we are harvesting. So for us, it's an advantage because you can use and explore the patios to dry, and then you can continue. You can totally dry your coffees in the patio.
Let me just for the listeners to just paint that sort of dichotomy there. The reason why Colombians have traditionally focused on washed coffees is because they have so much rain, so much humidity. It's really, really risky to run a natural, and it might go well, but it also might not go well. And so you're going to lose all of the cherry that you've allocated to that natural lot. And that was the risk you were referring to, which is not necessarily the case in Brazil.
Yes. And that's why, for example, in areas, and I remember that when I worked for one project in Brazil, we had fields that were close to the water. These fields, we could not wait to let them dry and then have the dried coffees on the tree and naturally tree dried and collect them, because they would ferment, because they were too close to the water. The humidity would make them ferment because of all these fluctuations of humidity. So we had to start early in those areas because we would then get the cherries and produce honeys. But if we waited until late to just get the naturally tree dried coffees, they would be fermented. So you have to really manage and know where you are. If you're in an area in a valley that can bring a lot of humidity, also if the fields are located there, you might have a problem. So you have to find a way and then produce honeys. So this is it's a really it's a science. You have to be really paying attention to every detail so that you can produce a better cup of coffee. But the patios, as I was mentioning, you have like the cement patios where we can dry and reduce the humidity to a certain level, and then we can continue on the mechanical dryers if we want. But if you have enough area on the patio to dry, you can totally finish. We also use African beds and covered patios, like greenhouses for drying coffees. There are different farms with different things they're trying to do different, following also trends. What is helping other producers in other countries. How can this be adapted to Brazil? There's a good communication among producers to learn from each other. But then there's a huge improvement, I'd say, in these 30 years in Brazil, in the past 30 years, 34 years, since the exports were allowed to happen for anyone, because people were looking for better quality. So at the farm you have this. The stripping, you can have a mechanical harvest, you can have a selective picking, and then you have the drying. We can have mechanical dryers, or only drying in the patios, or drying in African beds. It also depends on size, of course, always. If you're small and then you don't have a lot of area, you don't need a huge patio to dry. But if you are super big, if you have 1,000 hectares, you need a 30,000 square meter patio to do the pre-drying, because then you will have to finish at the mechanical. Yeah. But it's not a problem to finish at the mechanical. People say, "Oh, it's mechanical dried." So what? You can really do it well, and you can control the temperature, because you can set the temperature. And there are these gadgets today that they will even inform you if the temperature is going above what is planned. It will send an alert to your phone. So that you can go there and check what is happening. So there's technology helping in many ways, but mainly, you can use and you can reduce the humidity levels at the patio, and then you finish at the mechanical dryers, controlling and doing it very slow. And then you can also roast, dry for some time, and then you let it go. You put another coffee because they go up, they dry, they go down, they will go up again. So you can play, let the coffee cool, and then then people are experimenting a lot.
So you mentioned before that they're like post 1991, pre 1991. So I always find the economics of coffee for a particular country really interesting, and that the idea of what was the body that was controlling the export of coffee?
The IBC, the Brazilian Coffee Institute.
And that was because they wanted to control the quality, but also the volume of coffee that went out? Did they want to control the supply to maintain a price, or what was the idea behind it? It was a control. The coffee was also helping other sectors of our economy to grow. So they had this idea of volume, and there was no marketing. Colombia was much smarter. They started with the Cafés de Colombia much earlier. But Brazil, and I remember that when I studied in the US, I would see the propaganda, propaganda.
Yeah, they were at Roland Garros, the Olympic Games. They were super smart with how they treated coffee and how they promoted their amazing coffees. But Brazil was very shy, and they were using coffee to help other sectors, and they were focusing on quantity. But then there was this control, and because they wanted to control how much coffee was produced and exported, and so it was in the hands of a few people. But the change then happens after 1991 when the institute is extinguished and BSCA is founded. But at that time, BSCA was a super small group of people that got together and said, well, let's do it different. Let's
BSCA being Brazilian
Specialty Coffee Association. Yeah. And I was their executive director. So they wanted to do different. At that time, you had to pay a fee to become a member of the association, because the association would also help find commercial opportunities for the members. So they found a client in Switzerland. This client needed 10 containers. Maybe they didn't have 10 containers individually, but they could combine the coffees, because I have 320, you have 600, the other guy has 20. So they could partner and offer the coffees to many companies around the world. That's what they did. But in 2002, Brazil Specialty Coffee Association starts the promotion of the Brazilian coffee, the international marketing plan for the promotion of specialty coffees. It's when I joined them to take control of that plan. It was a project supported by the Ministry of Agriculture and the Exports Promotion Agency. With this, then we start traveling, going to exhibitions, and then it was open to anyone that would like to be part of. You could become a member also, but you didn't have to pay that high fee. It was like $10,000 to become a member of the association at the beginning when they started. But it was a nice idea. But then after they opened to everyone, it was not more a commercial entity. That it was, of course, an association, but with a commercial side. They became more institutional, so organizing Cup of Excellence, or organizing the trips of roasters to Brazil, also the trips of Brazilian producers to visit companies overseas. They changed a bit the focus.
And is that still a big focus now in terms of marketing Brazil as not just particular, but is there a budget, like a governmental budget that's allocated to marketing Brazilian coffee worldwide? Yeah,
there is. It's not. I think we've been doing, I think, a lot with the money. It's not a lot of money, but we have support from the exports promotion agents mainly. The Ministry of Agriculture now, it's not. They have other projects that they are supporting, but the exports promotion agency is super helpful for us. Without them, we wouldn't be able to be at the events or promote Brazilian coffee, organize this cupping sessions sometimes, or road shows. But they also understand that the producers have to invest because it's their business. You cannot subsidize for things forever, and people have to make the businesses be fruitful or be successful with, and not really depending on governmental money. But I cannot say a word about Apex, because they've been super good for us, super helpful, and without them we wouldn't be able to market this Brazil and be at all these exhibitions that we attend. And it's the logo, the slogan that we say, one country, many flavors, because of all this diversity of regions and many farmers doing, wonderful things, cup of excellence. We had Cup of Excellence yesterday in Brazil. It was the international jury, and the announcements, the awards were there. There were lots of Arara, as I was mentioning before. Arara varietal, yeah. It's one varietal that I like particularly a lot. It was there in the results, present with a good presence on the final results. But this is something that started in Brazil. Cup of Excellence started there, and then later we gave it the right to Alliance for Coffee Excellence to take control and organize competitions in other countries. Because in my time, I was getting requests to approve the organization of Cup of Excellence in other countries. It came to a point where we said, well, we have to collaborate and make this something that other countries can also benefit from. So this is what is happening in terms of this change in quality that started in 1991, and you see more and more. So going back to the beginning, Brazil nowadays can offer coffees from commercial coffees as also amazing specialty coffees from 80 to 90, 92 points. You can find, of course, the more we go higher in scores, the less we find. But there are beauties out there. We have it's not only the chocolatey and it's not only the I'm not talking only the Brazil can only do this if we do fermentations with yeast or other stuff. There are natural fermentations or honeys or even naturally tree dried naturals that are wonderful and totally out of this chocolate nut profiles. We have, for example, one fruity natural that I like called Toucan, which is
just regular natural.
It's a regular natural. It's an 84.5 coffee that is fruity, because we have the chocolatey cacao profile 82, but we also have other ones. But this is in the blended line, and if you go beyond that, you have even super extra different flavors.
Oh yeah, I was saying the other day, we need some of those.
Yeah,
to
so there are amazing coffees. Brazil is the image of Brazil being chocolate is the volume of Brazil, but the specialty coffee producers and farmers, you can find anything in Brazil now. This is what amazes us.
The reason why I asked about the marketing thing is because I think people in specialty, we tend to, because there's such a focus on the nano, it's like the farm, the person, that varietal within there, I think we tend to forget how important marketing was for Colombia in general in terms of their place in the world as being seen as just like a quality. Of course they have amazing coffees.
Amazing,
but that marketing, that sort of propaganda that you were talking about was so important early on in cementing that in people's minds.
Yeah, the Federación has done a wonderful job, helping this image to
and still sort of like how people think, like if coffee people are talking about coffee, we tend to get into the minute detail, but just the average Joe drinker is, they still think about coffee and I like a Brazil or I like a Colombian or an Ethiopian, and I think we tend to sort of forget about that.
Yeah, we are coffee snobs, right? we talk our language, and but there's a lot of things to still be taken to the consumers that's why I think it came to a point at the coffee shops where at some point we had people just vomiting information. Yes. And now we understand that we need to understand the consumer and if he wants that information or how we share, but we have to be careful. We don't want to scare these people because they, sometimes you say so many things that they feel they are stupid, We have to really be careful when if they want to know, yes, you talk. But if they want to just have their cup of coffee, we have to respect that. Yeah. We have to offer them good coffees. And with the fact that everybody's working quality nowadays, and there are so many beautiful coffees everywhere. I was visiting Yunnan 2 years ago, and I had amazing geishas from Yunnan. And then you have a Panama that is one of my favorite origins, Kenya, Ethiopia, Colombia, Costa Rica, and everybody has amazing coffees. This is like finding the good coffees in these countries. And also, I had a conversation one of those days that was a really, I was sad to hear that, because I had a talk with a friend of mine, and he was saying, why is Brazil trying to produce specialty? They should keep producing this commodity coffees, because people, you look at the market now, it's super expensive. You have to take advantage and produce volume. I said, really? Is this what you think? Because no, we have been growing our demand over the years, and I talk about this all the time in all my podcasts and in all my interviews when I write. If we grow only 2% a year in coffee demand, which is not too much, I don't know what is the specialty coffee consumption growth here in Dubai.
Those numbers I don't know.
But let's say it would be
growth.
10%, maybe.
Like year-on-year growth.
Yeah, for specialty. Because
I
so
don't
many
know.
coffee shops opening everywhere. In some places, it's 15, depending on how mature they are. If they're
I would say like Saudi in this area, along with some of the areas of Asia, would be some of the highest growth in the world.
in the world, yeah. But then Brazil, we've been there 15 in the past. Now we're still growing. But if we grow 2%, and 2% is not a lot, it's the growth of the population. It's super, I'm being really reasonable. If we grow 2% until 2050, we have to double the production of the world. We have to go to 300 million bags, and we are producing 170 million. If we don't find a way to get together and work for the improvement of practices and paying the producers well, of course, I think there need to be a balance, because the consumers, they will pay up to a certain point, and after that, they will tend to shift to other things. But we have to work together in collaboration, because we have to double the production of the world. We are talking about 26 years. 26 years is nothing, but double the production of the world, is it possible to do? And who could be playing the game to support this growth? Brazil, of course, we are the biggest producer. Say Brazil, Colombia, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Vietnam. Then other players could be maybe Uganda, China. So we have to start thinking, because what I see is that this growth will be something that is going to be challenging, and also that this line of growth for reaching 300 million bags has to be followed by a line of specialty consumption increasing production too. Because if we continue to produce commodity and the line continues to expand for the growth of this 300 million bags, people will be fighting for the specialty coffees, because there will be less specialty coffee for people who are in projects focusing in quality. Because the more I visit places, anytime I come to Dubai or any other country in the world, traveling so many days a year, I see new coffee shops, and these people are after quality coffees. They are not after commercial coffees. So there will be a battle. People will fight for the good coffees. So this combination of increasing production, but increasing production of good coffees is important also. This line has to be following this 2% line, but it's not in the same speed. We have to take care of that. And then there are so many factors that will affect everything in the future. We face, and I think other countries also face numerous problems. We have droughts. We had a severe drought in Brazil now, the one of the strongest since 1981. 3 months, like almost no rain. So the coffee fields were suffering. We needed the water for blossoming. Then it came. We had a good blossom. But let's see how it goes. The plants suffered a lot. Then January, we need rain until January. All this month, November, December, January, so that the beans develop and grows, so that the the screen size will be good. Not will be that it won't be small, because if it is smaller, it means the production will be smaller, because we need more beans for our 60 kilo bags. So sometimes we have drought, sometimes we have rain, sometimes we have no rain, sometimes we have rain in July, June, when it's our harvest season, when it's not ideal, because it's our winter time and it's our dry time, but sometimes we have rain. We have frost, we have hail, we have labor shortage. Nobody wants to work in the fields. We see that these people, the pickers, they're getting, their age. You see that these old people that are still there because they don't have an option, but the young generation does not want to work in the
that's
fields.
going to be a big problem for coffee everywhere, isn't
everywhere.
it? It's the labor that is used to selectively pick.
And if we have to
cherries.
double, you need more people, and we have always less people working. So the machines, mechanization is important. And then people say, "Oh, but it's mechanized." So what? Mechanization allows you with the machines to remove the lower fingers of the machine, and then you can pass only on top of the tree where maturation happens first. Then you can put the lower fingers, and then you can pass again. You can go 2-3 times. The important thing is to not vibrate too much and pass fast, because if you pass too slow and you vibrate too intensely, you will remove a lot of green, and you don't want the green. But of course, the green is a different story. The green can also be removed later at the washing stations when they float or sink, and then later on by the color sorting machines.
Sorry, does the mechanized strip picking of the plants, does that have an impact on the longevity of those plants and how they're likely to sort of like reflower, rebud?
No. It's important that when they are young, they are still very fragile. So you use people. But as they grow older, they become stronger, the branches are stronger, they won't affect, because it's like they will vibrate. Of course, conducting it, not to let too many of the side things that grow and then might break not only the fingers of the machine, but the machines are super helpful. And I've seen now people, they are doing terraces, but they are using two rows of tree and then a terrace, two, so that they can mechanize even the mountains. This might be an alternative for the future. So people will plant, they will create these terraces in the farm, but where they can drive a machine and harvest, because otherwise they won't have people to do it. I've also seen a lot of robots, robots for apples and drones, and this will be also something to consider for the future, because they will be able to sort, even do selective picking or stripping, whatever happens, or shaking and vibrating like the machines do. And then the post-harvesting will be the process to separate the cherries from the green and naturally tree-dried coffees. But it's something that worries me.
If you also look at, if we need specialty coffee production to increase with that increase in consumption, if we look at the amount of land that's going to be available at that time, I'm sure it's going to be less than what is actually available now. So to be able to get that sensory profile that's required, it is going to require a lot of, let's say, fermentation or whatever. And I think if that is the case, to try and if people are requiring fruit in the cup without the natural environment that those cherries are supposed to grow in, the fermentations are going to be required, and that means that almost we're going to get a lot more monotonous and homogeneous taste profiles, sensory profiles coming from coffee as we go into the future. That nuance that comes from just different varietals growing in the where they're supposed to grow is going to go out the window.
True.
I think.
Also, something that we will have to think it is global warming.
Right.
Global warming is pushing the coffee up the mountains, right? Because if you're in Colombia at a certain altitude, the coffee will be pushed always, to higher and higher, or will stay at the high places they are. But some belts in the lower parts of the mountains won't be able for production because of the global warming. So how do we do it? We need to work on different varietals, research, and
same for Brazil. The plains are going to become too hot.
Yeah, and then what happens
the lower altitudes.
The lower altitudes. But in Brazil, we still have the the latitude effect. We can go to 24, 25,
Right.
go drive south. This can be an alternative, but we already have other cultures. We have other crops. We have corn, we have soy, we have other things. And one important thing that will happen in this planet is feed the planet. So will I give Drew a land to grow coffee or grow rice and beans and corn and other stuff? So this is something that will be more and more
crop competition for the land
for
available,
the land.
right?
So am I gonna, of course there is a place to grow coffee, but is this going to be more important than feeding a growing population?
And do you think governments are going to step in and maybe start to allocate land?
I think they will be starting to also defining, because nowadays we have
grow here, you can't grow here.
You can't go, or this is important, this is not important. Also use of water, because nowadays we have irrigation in some farms, in some areas like Cerrado, you need a lot of irrigation. Some places you need, sometimes you don't, but some people irrigate because it's an insurance they have in case they need water for the blossoming, they will have to offer. But when you go to the government and you ask permission to use water from the river, you will be allocated a certain number of liters that you can extract from the river, because the river has to flow, it cannot stop. There are other people that use this water, and some other irrigation projects. So sometimes you go and you ask, there's no more water to be given, for a project, because it's already taken by 2 or 3 people that are using. But then in the future, will this be readdressed? Okay, these people have permission, but then they will be taken, and then I will give to the ones that are preparing food, producing food. No, not to people that are doing maybe things that are not so important for the population. This is going to be, I think, an issue of the future. So global warming, the use of water, but then we have to look for varietals that are more resistant to heat and less rain, less water. Caneforas are something that will be playing a bigger role in the future.
What is Brazil doing with Canefora?
We have 1/3 of our production already in Caneforas. We have Conilons in Espírito Santo region and Bahia, and we have the Robustas Amazônicos in Acre, Rondônia. So they are doing well. And just as a curiosity, Rondônia used to produce in the past in 300,000 hectares of land. We're not talking about deforestation. This is land that has been there because it's close to the Amazon. Everybody is always paying attention. No, this is area that has cattle nowadays, but it was an area that has that had coffee in the past. So it was 300,000 hectares. Nowadays, they produce only in 50,000 hectares. They produce the same, but in a much smaller area, because of they were able to improve the productivity, the yield, and with their practices and the clones, the creating of the different clones that are more productive and blah blah blah. So there are still 250,000 hectares to grow back, if in case they want, because they have animals, they have cows there, but they could expand the land and produce. If they expand this back to 300,000 hectares, only in Rondônia plus Espírito Santo in Canefra production, we would be bigger than Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
So there are lands to be still, and now something that was not important in my state, for example, São Paulo, which is an area where you have Alta Mogiana, you have Sorocabana, you have Circuito das Águas, different regions, região vulcânica. There are many regions producing coffees there. But we see now people starting to look for caneforas in areas that are of lower altitude where they still have land that can be used. Why not? Okay, well, let's try and see how it behaves, because with the improvement in post-harvesting processes for canefora, they are like mind-blowing. Why not to give it a chance? In the past, we would have direct fire for drying caneforas. Direct. It cannot taste good.
Right, okay, I understand. Right.
If you do it like the Arabica, you have indirect fire, or you have a drying in the patios, And we have all these people, small producers from these regions, like 2 hectares big, 5 hectares big, that they are doing special preparations with fermentation in bioreactors, doing selective picking. It tastes wonderful. I've been selling these coffees for 6 years already. I travel and I always put on the table, but I never tell them it is a canáfora at the beginning. I just review at the end, because if you tell them it's a canáfora, they would have, they have prejudice from their mind, have prejudice, which is good to break when you have this paradigms being broken by people that are there cupping and they say, well, what is this? Well, this has this whiskey notes. Yes, it's a canáfora, a specialty coffee canáfora. And I attended an event in the past in Rondônia, and where they produce amazing specialty canáforas. And we had a cupping starting with 80-point canáforas all the way to 92-point canáforas, using their cupping form. But it was incredible to see. I have a book, the Barista Guide. It's already on its 6th edition in Brazil. And last edition, when I published, I had to make corrections on my writings about the canáforas, because I had access only to standard quality, commercial quality canáforas. I had never had the specialty canáforas. But then when I had it, I had to change. It changed my mind, and I had to change it because it was written, lower quality, and I had to give emphasis to the good things that they offer, and all these different notes, and there's a revolution to happen in this area as well. So we will see more and more Arabicas doing a good job, but then also the canáforas expanding and being more present. So we will not be able to close our eyes anymore to canáfora production.
Yeah. I think specialty coffee companies will introduce both lines or both types of that Robusta canáfora. One at that kind of, obviously it's a whiskey, it's fermented or, has an anaerobic process or whatever is done. But then also just standard. I think they're going to introduce blends that can be used, because I think a lot of the times there is an overselling of what needs to be, let's say, specialty when it's a milk beverage. You know what I mean? I think the types of coffees that we're putting into some of the blends, it's kind of like an oversell. We're over-servicing some of the customers who are drinking coffee currently. And so I think we're going to find some cheaper Robustas coming to them.
Yeah, I think we must think about this fast, because we have to start introducing this, to create this habit of the consumer to be familiar with this, not to say what is happening. And the canáforas, they are wonderful with milk. They drink much better than the Arabicas, in my opinion. I love the specialty canáforas when I have a cappuccino or a latte or a macchiato. They taste super nice. So we will see more and more of the canáforas in the future, not only due to their amazing improvement in quality and the research and what they are doing, trying to shift, this reality that we had about the only commercial canáforas, and also because we will see also people working more on the clones and working to improve processes and post-harvesting techniques, and research will also help.
And so we were speaking before about some of the issues that let's say producers and farmers were facing in Brazil with respect to them not necessarily being as educated in terms of being able to cup coffees, and that. Are you able to sort of share any, shed some light on some of the issues they face?
Yeah, that's a huge thing. I think it is not only the case of Brazil, but around the world. Unfortunately, our producers were not taught to cup their coffees, to know the quality. And this is important because not only because they will make money and make more money by knowing the score, the real score of the coffee. It is because if they know how to cup, they could be monitoring what is drying in the patio. And if they had an amazing cup of coffee coming from a particular area, they would know, oh, it's a arara, or this is a geisha. It comes from this field. What happened? I did this, I did that, and then I'm going to try to do it again. But he has the chance to do it when he is harvesting. And then he can fast, take an action and go there to that field or to a similar field and harvest and try to do the same to be able to match or get close to that profile, to master that profile. But we have only one chance a year to do that. It's harvest. And so everything that you want to plant, it's always for next year. But by knowing the coffee that you are producing, knowing the quality of the coffee that you are producing, or see some mistake that you made by checking, having all the controls that to avoid next time. But it's important to know that during harvest, you have to cup the coffees to be able to do that. But most people don't. They will harvest their coffee, they will dry their coffee, they will put the coffee in the warehouse, and then they will sell to people or to cooperatives or importers, exporters to cup for them. So we have a project which is teaching the farmers to get to know their coffees better, selling them an equipment that will be easy for them to use, that they don't have to be a roast master to be able to roast the coffees, and then teach them on how to cup an 80-point coffee, an 85-point coffee, a 90-point coffee. Then they would be able to play the game better.
So yeah, sort of empowering them to understand how to,
make
you can give them a
corrections.
roast the coffee, cup the coffee, be able to understand what they have and what price that should be sold at. And that can allow them to sort of obviously get as much money as they're supposed to get, but then circumvent any situations in which there were people maybe trying to take advantage of them by buying coffees and saying, "Hey, I don't, this is an 80-point coffee," whereas it's actually an 83, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I
so
think
one thing it is making the corrections at the harvest time, so that you can make less mistakes in the coffees that are coming from your harvest that time. And the other thing it is what you mentioned, because by not knowing the quality of what they have, if they take to anybody that will be buyers of coffee in Brazil, the person can say, "Oh, it's an 81-point coffee, and this might be an 84." If they don't know the product, they will just sell and not get the money that they could.
I think for the people that are listening, sometimes this does happen where there's an information asymmetry between the buyer and the seller, or that producer of that coffee. Sometimes that will be taken advantage of, and they'll try and pay less than is actually. Should be paid for that coffee. And then we have to also remember not just in Brazil, and everywhere.
Anywhere. But this is they're the weakest point. So empowering them is important for us. We teach them. They come. They bring their samples to the office. We cup, and we just give the results. They go. We don't charge for that, but it's a way for us to give them something that if they have to take to somebody to sell the coffee, they can sell to us, of course, but it's not mandatory because we don't want to, make this something that to tie the producer to us. He must have the freedom. If he sells to us, it's because we are paying a good price, and if we're promoting his coffee. But with this information, the score that he can go to another place to sell. If the guy tells him, "Oh, this is an 83-point coffee," but the guy says, "Oh, this is an 81-point coffee," he would say, "Hey, why? Listen, these cuppers, these skill graders from that company cupped, and they said it was an 83. I will think about it." Then it changed the conversation. It will maybe, and this makes a difference because 20 reais or 30 reais more for a coffee for this guy is certainly a huge amount of money at the end.
All right. Well, I think that gives our listeners a little bit of an insight into coffee production in Brazil currently. Moving forward, the future for Brazil, what is kind of next that is happening within the next sort of 10 years? Let's not focus on 2050 where that's sort of unknown, but what do you think, just sort of close this out, what's going to happen?
I think we are now seeing more in this thing of where can we also grow caneforas is starting, not only in Espírito Santo or Amazon region, Rondônia, Acre, but also then in other states, in lower areas. How can we produce a better canephora and take advantage that there are land to be occupied? The other thing would be finding a solution for the labor, which is the most important thing nowadays in terms of the difficulties that we are facing.
As we're seeing that population age out and we
Population
don't have
age,
replacements.
the generation gap, the millennials, or they're not interested in working in coffee. So creating these terraces in mountainous areas, using more machines, and of course, focusing also to produce amazing coffees. So how do we go for varietals that are super good here, test them more, experiment more. So it's going the direction of specialty coffee, which is it's important, but also paying close attention to these problems that we'll be facing, like weather, global warming. We have to survive with coffee, but there are some tricky things ahead.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you very much for your time, man. Really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you.
And until next time, we're done.
See you next.
Awesome.